In this video, I am going to show you how you can use Claude Code to debug issues in your Kubernetes cluster. We will be running through two scenarios. In the first scenario, we will be fixing a pod that is in CrashLoopBackOff state. And in the second issue, we will be asking Claude Code to fix a pod that is in pending state because the cluster cannot scale. By the way, my name is Sagar Gulabani and I have been working as a Devops engineer for the past 8 years. So let's get started. So let's consider a scenario where we are trying to investigate the CrashLoopBackOff of our pod when there was no Claude Code. Here is what you would have done. You would have connected to your Kubernetes cluster. You would have run kubectl commands to describe the pod and see what is going on. Then you would have checked the logs of the container to identify the problem. Let's say there is an environment variable missing that has not been passed to the container from the config map. You would have gone and edited the config map to pass the environment variable and restart your container. And now your container or your pod starts running. Now this is a fairly simple problem and it could have taken about 5 to 10 minutes for you to fix this issue. Let's say the problem is very complex. This could take a lot of time, like 30 minutes to 1 hour. Now with Claude Code coming into the picture, you can give it access to your cluster and it can check the pod, check the logs, check the config map, go and fix the issue and restart the pod, and boom, your container starts running. As the complexity of the issue increases, the ROI of using Claude Code to debug the problem increases. Now let's see it in action. Here I have a Python app that you can find in this GitHub repository. In this code, I have the app.py file which is looking for the API key, and I have not passed this API key in the config map. So this pod will not start. As you can see, the pod is in CrashLoopBackOff state. Now let's try to use Claude to fix this problem. Can you please look at the Here I have asked Claude to see the demo API pod in the demo namespace and see why it's not running and try to fix it. Let's run and see what happens. Before taking any critical action, Claude always asks for permission. And if it's your production cluster, you must ensure that you are reviewing every permission that Claude asks. That will ensure that you stay safe. So as you can see, Claude has found the root cause here. It says that the app requires API key env var at startup, but the app config map intentionally omits it. So here Claude suggests fixes on what it can do. It can create a new secret with the API key and pass it to the deployment, or it can add the API key to the config map. So I'll go with the option of adding it to the config map. For now, I'll go with number 3, where I will also give it the API key value. By the way, I have used Claude Code to debug more complex issues than this simple issue. This simple issue is just to demonstrate to you the power of Claude Code for debugging. As we can see, the pods have come into running state. Now let's move on to the next scenario where we will try to deploy a pod which takes a lot of resources and has 8 replicas of the pod running. I only have 2 nodes in this cluster and this cluster will not be able to deploy the 8 replicas. So what will happen in that case is Cluster Autoscaler, which is already deployed on the cluster, will try to scale up new nodes in the node group of this EKS cluster. But that won't happen, and the pods will be stuck in pending state, and we will ask Claude to debug what is the problem and suggest a fix. We'll go ahead with what it proposes, and we'll see that the pods will start running. So let me apply this manifest. The pods are in pending state. Let's give it about 1 minute to see whether the pods schedule or not. We can see that some of them have come in running, but others are in pending state. Now let's ask Claude why these pods are in pending state. So as we can see here, it has found out that the Cluster Autoscaler tried to scale up and failed. And it has figured that the root cause is that the Cluster Autoscaler's IAM role is missing write permissions on the EKS node group's autoscaling group. And it has given a proper chain of failure. Let's read through it. It says that 8 replicas were requested, out of which only 2 could fit on the existing nodes. The other 6 stayed pending with failed scheduling, insufficient CPU. Cluster Autoscaler detects the pending pods and tries to scale the autoscaling groups, but AWS rejects it with an access denied error saying that no identity-based policy allows the autoscaling set desired capacity action. Cluster Autoscaler then puts the node group in CrashLoopBackOff, and kubectl emits the particular event which we see when we describe the pod. So now, to fix this problem, we will ask Claude to put the missing permissions and see whether it works or not. Here I had used Terraform initially to create the resources, but I am asking Claude to directly make the changes in AWS. Claude has updated the policy and put itself to sleep for a while till the IAM changes reflect. Meanwhile, I'll ask it to check the logs of the Cluster Autoscaler. So as you can see here, the Claude has determined that Cluster Autoscaler is stuck in its memory backoff state and it wants to restart the pod to clear the state. Let's restart the Cluster Autoscaler pod. So Claude has this ability to prepare these very complex commands very easily and run them. If you were to prepare and run these commands, it would have taken you 15 to 20 minutes. Claude is asking me for feedback on how it's doing. Let's just say it's doing good. And as we can see, the scale up has been triggered and the autoscaling group is going from 2 to 4 nodes. Let's wait for the nodes to join the cluster and the pods to schedule. It takes about 30 seconds for a new node to join a Kubernetes cluster. Let's check if the nodes have joined the cluster. Yes, they have joined. And we can see that there are still 2 pods that are in pending state. Let's wait for Claude. Actually, let's ask Claude to check the pods now. In between the task, Claude has decided to create a memory of how I operate. So there were two things that I suggested it to use: the CS profile, which is my AWS profile, and to fix incidents directly in AWS, not in Terraform. This can be used to record our preferences based on how we operate, and in future Claude sessions, Claude will take care of this. So as we can see, Claude says that the pods are still in pending because the node group's max size is equal to 4. And what we can do here is we can increase the max size of the autoscaling group and see whether the pods schedule or not. So I'll tell Claude to increase the max size of the autoscaling group directly in AWS. So one important thing to notice here is that Claude can easily move between Kubernetes, Code, and AWS, which is a superpower. So the max has been increased to 6 for the autoscaling group. So again, we are waiting for the new nodes to join the cluster and the new pods to schedule. The idea is clear to you now as to how you can use Claude to debug issues instead of you running commands, checking AWS, checking Terraform, checking the code, checking the autoscaling group configuration, and checking the cluster autoscaler logs. So that will be it for this video, and let me know what you thought about it in the comments section. Also, if there are any other ideas on which you want to create videos in the Devops and the AI space, let me know. Thank you.